Taxes?
Yes.
Yeah, a lot of people do. All right, we'll get started. All right, what do we have? Quiz in 2 days. There's going to be no homework to actually do between now and Wednesday, but I did post some study problems that would have been homework with the answers, so that you have something, and it's just a few problems that we'll be covering today, because only however far we get today could be on the quiz on Wednesday.
You're talking about the quiz 3, chapter 3 study guide you posted?
Yeah, you see, I wouldn't call it a guide, but let's see, it says Chapter 3 Study Problems, Fall 2017, those right there. And I think I may have opened it up. Let's take a look real quick. No, that's not it.
Yeah.
You here? No, that's not it. Or is that it? That is it. Yeah, you're going to learn today how to calculate the tax based on what the taxable income is. And so you have 2 of them you need to do to study. You would have done if it were homework. This person is head of household that has a taxable income of $33,000. So you got to go to the chart for head of household, which is way over here. And you got to calculate the tax based on $33,000, which you're about to learn how to do. The other one is a single person with taxable income of $38,500. So you go to the single column and you take into consideration $38,500. I'm about to show you how to calculate it. And what you're used to doing is going to a tax table like this. Has anybody ever seen a tax table? Have you ever done your taxes? You have. So there's at least one person. No one else has seen. Let me show you what it looks like. Does that look familiar to anyone? 2, 3, 4. That's about it. 5, 6. Wow. The rest of you, someone else is doing your taxes, or you're not even doing taxes yet.
Use TurboTax.
Turbo.
TurboTax.
I pay someone to do mine.
Okay. Okay. All right. So now notice the columns are on this tax table also. Single, married, filing, jointly. There's head of household. So you would use the appropriate column if you're using the tax table. What you're about to learn today, which is the tax calculation, that's just like this homework. Let me get back to this homework if I can. Actually, usually for most people, allows their tax to be about $4 or $4 to $10 less than if they use the table. So, just so you know. I'm so cheap that I want to save that $4 to $10. Nobody likes that story. Edit that out. All right. Are you ready? You ready to learn this? Let's just jump right into it. Let me get to the PowerPoint so we can see the example on the PowerPoint real quick. Slide, let's see, 11, I think. Don't worry about which tax table you're getting, because you're going to use, whether it's an old tax table, the most recent tax table, it's all done the exact same way. It's just a matter of using the table, no matter if this is the right numbers or not. It's how to use the table. All right, in my example, I think I wrote down an example here that I wanted to talk about. Let's pretend that a person, I'm jumping ahead, but let's say a person does they're doing their tax form, which we're about to talk about, and they get to that part that's at the top, near the top of the second page. Not at the top, but near the top of the second page of that 1040. There's a line item called taxable income. This is after deductions, after itemized deductions, and all kinds of changes that could take place. And then you get to that line item called taxable income, and this is what the tax is based on. I want to pretend as that line item is $39,001 is that line item called taxable income. They may have made more than that or less, but through adjustments and so on as you go through the form, this is the amount they have to pay taxes on. Now, a lot of people, you're going to hear them say, oh, you're in a higher tax bracket, or when you get to another tax bracket, they always go, oh, I'm below the next tax bracket, so I only have to pay 15% instead of 25%. What is this number? No, they're above it. Or what's the next one? Oh, I just got into the next tax bracket, so now I got to pay 28%. Well, that's kind of a myth. You're not really paying 25, 28%. You're only paying 25 and 28% on just the amount that went over and put into the next tax bracket. So in this case, this $39,001, yes, it lands in the 25% tax bracket, but only the amount above the minimum for that bracket is taxed at that higher rate. We all get taxed on the initial money at the exact same rate, 10%, 15%, 25%. So on this chart, The first $8,500, if this were this year, it's not, but if it were, everybody gets taxed the exact same rate on that first initial $8,500. Let me show you another bracket. If you're a single taxpayer, here's another bracket, right? Is this it? Is this it? Come on. Nope. There, that is it, right there. Here's 2016's brackets. Let's use single filer. How much will everybody have to pay 10% tax on, up to how much, no matter how much they make? You got to look at the max for that tax bracket, 9,275. So even though this number is way above 9,275, this person still only pays 10% tax on the first 9,275, just like everybody else, every person in the country. And so everybody goes, oh no, they're going to pay, where's this land? 25% on that money, only on the part that fell in the 25%, not on all the money at the beginning. All right, I'm going to save this bracket. Let's use this one. So now this person is at $39,001. The first $9,200, is this single we're going with, did I say? So the first $9,275, they're taxed at 10%, 0.10. I can tell that this is going to be, just moving the decimal over one, $927.50 is owed in taxes on that first amount of money, and everybody whose taxable income is over that has that exact tax on that first amount, no matter how much they made. The next one is at 15%. All the money over 9,275 from 76, all the way to 37,000. This is above that, so all the money they made between 37,650 to 9,275, that difference is taxed at 15%. And everybody who has money in that particular bracket is taxed the exact same rate, no matter how much they made. So I got to find the difference there. What is it? $37,050 minus the amount that's been taxed already, 9,275. So I write this down because I want to make sure you do this right. 37,650 is the max in this bracket minus the amount that's been taxed already, 9,275. This represents the amount that has not been taxed out of that 39,000, because this 9,000 has already, and this equals, the difference is 28,375, and that is taxed at 15%. So 15% times that is $4,256.25. So there's, everybody's taxed the same on the first money, 10%, $927.50. Everybody's taxed on this money, if they went above $37,650, $4,256.25. But they have more than the $37,650, the max for that bracket. So we got to find the difference, but they're not into the next bracket because it goes all the way to 91. So we'll take their income, $39,001, minus all the money that's been taxed already, which is $37,650. It's all been taxed. If you add that 28,000 plus that 9,000, that's $37,650. So I'm subtracting $37,650. This amount has not been taxed yet, and this is the only amount that's going to be taxed at that higher next bracket, 25%. Not the whole income. And the difference here is, I already got it right here, $1,350 times 0.25. And this tax on this one's going to be $337, and I think it says 75 cents. Now I add up each of these taxes. The part that was taxed at 10%, the part that was taxed at 15%, and the part that was taxed at 25. Is 25 the next percentage? You gotta look. 25. And when you add all three of them up, their total tax comes to $5,521.50. Now, I want you to look at the table I'm about to put up and tell me how much their tax would be if they went ahead and used the table instead of calculating it. Here we go. We're using the column for single taxpayer. I'm gonna find how to scroll this down here. Where is it? There it is. I'm going all the way to, what am I going to? 39,001? A long way to go. There we go. 38, 39. Let's see, from $39,000 to $39,050. Go to the column single, and it says 5,528. Is that correct? Maybe I should try to make this bigger. Can you see it? 5,528. So they're having to pay about what? $650 more in taxes for using the table and calculating it, because the table always uses the top number. So this person's going to pay taxes as if it's $39,050, even though they've only made $39,001. And that's how that works. And look at $39,000 even. Somebody would go right there and use this tax, 5,528. Now realizing they actually could use the previous table, because look at the upper limit here. Whoops. What was the number? Where's 38? I lost it. I went too far?
You gotta scroll to the right one.
Oh, I see what I'm doing. Because I made it so big. There we go. Look. So if you made $39,000 on the nose, you could use either one. You'd want to use this one. But if you didn't notice it, because you're just looking at the big numbers, you would have automatically used the other one, which is almost $10 or $11 more. All right, so now, let me give you another bracket. We're going to go look at this one right here. If you saw this bracket on a quiz, and you were told this person's filing head of household, and their taxable income, not their gross income, taxable income is $47,000. Could you calculate? Does everybody see what I'm pointing at? What's the point I'm making? You would go to this column, if this were the chart, and you would go, oh, the first 12,150 is taxed at 10%. You'd figure out the difference. 46,000 is the upper limit here. They're over that. I think I just said 47. Is that what I said? Yep. So 46 minus what's been taxed out, you already calculated. The difference times 15%. And then the little bit that's above 46,250, that's the part that's taxed at the higher rate of 25%, just that little bit. And then you add the three numbers together. What if the person said, single taxpayer, taxable income, 90,000? How many different taxes would you have to calculate and add together? 4, because that lands in 4 different brackets. Single taxpayer, 90,000. The part from 90,000 to 83,600 is the only part that's going to be taxed at 28%. But you got to do the tax at 25. I've seen students before say, well, if this question is going to be on a quiz, they already have the tax calculated for the 10% and 15%, so they don't have to sit there and try to do those. And then they go, okay, it landed in the 25 or 28. Those are the only ones they got to add to it. They already have them calculated in advance when they walk in here. So that's the toughest part of today's lecture, being able to calculate your own tax. Everybody get it? Email me if you don't. It's on your home. Well, you don't have homework. What am I saying? It's on your study problems. Now we're going back to, where's my slide 3. What kind of taxes will you face in your life? These are the most common. Every year we got to pay income tax, tax on our earnings. And then when you own a home, everybody's got to pay property taxes. There's the most common ones right there. We'll have, every time we go buy something, where's that? Sales tax, 6% in this state. So we have sales tax, and then there happens to be one you won't learn about till maybe one of your parents are passing, or you get really old and you go, oh. And it's a tax on wealth. If your parents are leaving you, oh, I've got $200,000 saved up, and I'm on my, I'm passing. This is yours. Well, if it's not set up correctly, you have to pay taxes on that. You just can't have the money without paying taxes on it, which is kind of a burden, because that taxes were already paid on that money by your parent.
What if they own a house and they inherit the house?
If you don't have it set up right, you gotta make sure and talk to a tax lawyer and find out, because odds are there are gonna be taxes to get that house then put in your name, from their name, if it's not done correctly. A lot of people to avoid taxes do what's called a trust. They'll set up a trust before they pass away, and the trust, if it's set up correctly, allows you to avoid a large amount of inheritance tax. Maybe not all of it, but most of it. So the trust is like an entity within itself. So your parents have a house, and maybe they have some money still in their retirement, and they'll put it in the name of the trust before they pass. So now it's the trust that owns it, even though your parents get to use it, it's really their money, and they have total access to it. Nothing changes, but it's the trust. Then you become the trustee after they pass away. You're avoiding the tax because it didn't get passed on to you. It's still in the trust, but now you have control over it. You can withdraw money or whatever you want to do. So those are the taxes we all face, right there. We don't have personal property tax in this state, but businesses do. Every year we had to, businesses that I used to work for and managing the business side of it, had to pay taxes on our inventory for all the things we have on display and all our fixtures. We had to pay taxes on once a year. That's your personal property that a lot of businesses have to pay. So I just want you to know what kind of taxes you're going to expect. Now we're going to slide 8. I want to make sure you know exactly where that taxable income is. Where am I? Calculating taxable income. So I'm going to go to the 1040 I passed out. Can you see that up there? Yes. I want to make sure you are very familiar with these sections. On page 1, this first section is all the different types of income most people have, and they have to report. And what you're looking at is what's called a long form. I know some of you probably did a 1040 easy in the past, or a 1040A, which is in between the easy and the long form. But once you start having retirement and you start investing and saving money, you're going to have to do a long form, so you got to get used to it. At first, you're going to leave a lot of lines blank because they don't, they're not anything that you're doing. But as gradual time goes on, you'll start getting more involved, owning a house and moving from one place to another because of a job or whatever, and you will use a lot more of these line items then, and you have to do a long form in that case. But wages is the number one reason why people do taxes, because they have wages they have to pay taxes on. Taxable interest, some of you have gotten those from bank or a credit union because you had a savings account there that paid some interest. A long time ago before interest rates went down, that was important because you were making some real interest, like 5% on your money instead of only 0.5%. And then you see where it says there's tax exempt interest, maybe you had it in a tax-free investment of some kind. Ordinary dividends, 9A, and qualified dividends. What's nice about it is when you start getting into investing, you don't have to really keep track of when did I buy that, what was the price I bought it at, how many shares, how many did I sell. At the end of the year, the brokerage or financial institution you're going through is going to send you a form that almost looks kind of like a W-2. But it's giving you an idea as to here's the dividends you received from things you sold through us. Here's the interest you earned from things you sold through us. And so you just have to transfer the numbers off this W-2 just like you do with your job for the investments that you have to report. Now you don't have to report money made on an investment because you sold it for more than what you bought it for until the year you sell it. I want to make sure you heard that. You graduate from college, let's say next year. You start making money, and you've already saved some, because you're like me, I still lived like a poor college student when I graduated. And so I was saving money right away. You start getting into investing, you're going, oh, look at this stock is doing really well. And in fact, let me give an example here. The stock is doing really well. I'm going to go to Bobby's. Bob, you bought WWE, and you bought it when?
Like last Friday.
Oh, that was just last Friday?
Yep.
That was your first buy and only buy, 90 shares at $24.72?
Yep.
And you have gained, what's the percent on here? I can't see it. Darn. Does this go over? Oh, can't see it. It's something like 3 or 4%, I think. Have you looked at all? Have you had a chance?
Try to control minus.
But you can see Really, what will that do?
Minus back out, zoom in.
Really? Control minus, where's my minus? There we go, thank you. 3.32%. Where is Tesla? Tesla's killing you.
Yeah.
Killing you at minus 10, but yet he's been able to move all the way up, I think, second place. Is that true? Second place, and it's been because of Alphabet, which is really Google. I can't remember blanky blank years ago why they switched the name to Alphabet, but it's really Google. Google has gone up 3.47%, and WWE has gone up 3.32%. The only problem I see here is you invested too little in Google.
Yeah, I had more and then I sold it.
Oh, is that why? Okay. Oh, that's right. You had 3 shares. Look at how much it is a share. $1,000, $1,015 for 1 share. And back in the old days, before computers, when I was investing, I know this sounds crazy, a long time ago, you had to go to a brokerage, and you had no choice, but the minimum you could buy is 100 shares. And if you wanted to buy, is that Google, right? Google, 100 shares would be over $100,000. Hardly anybody would be able to invest in it. And that's why a lot of companies would do those splits to bring their prices down per share so the average investor could afford to get into their company for 100 shares. Now with the internet and everything's online, you can buy 1 share, you can buy 2 shares. Companies still do splits for psychological reasons, but they don't have to because somebody, now don't get me wrong, not everybody wants to spend $1,000 on just 1 share, but if you're paying the commission, you probably would. So 1 share, 2 shares. I want to point out he has been doing some limit trading. Is that right? Or is that someone else? Was that Jacob? No, you have. For example, this Google sold on limit, meaning you set the price at somewhere around 1,011, and it sold at 1,011. But look at the cost of commission. Instead of being $6.99, he had to pay $11.99, and I talked about that last week. If you set up a limit, it's a little more expensive, but he didn't have to watch it, and it got up to a certain price and sold for him, right? Did you remember setting that? And I think I noticed you set another one on limit that hasn't taken place yet. You can see it right here. It was the WWE. If it ever hits 27, he has it all set up to sell automatically. He's saying, you know, I want to get out of it. I'll be happy with 27 if it hits, right? Is that how you set it up? Now, what I don't know is if that can be canceled. So the limit, because it hasn't gone through, you can go and cancel it. And you wouldn't be charged the fee, right? So, you know, at any time, you can set up all your investments. Hey, if it gets to a certain price or it goes down to a certain price, I want to sell it or buy it. You can set that all up, and you won't be charged anything. And that way, if you're not watching it, you go, oh, so it was worth the extra, how much extra here in commission? You paid, I forgot already. $12 versus $7, so an extra $5. It's worth the extra $5. It sold right when I wanted it to, or I bought them right when I wanted it to without having to watch it. And if now you're watching it and it hasn't sold or bought, you can cancel the limit and never get charged that, and do it yourself and only get charged then the $6.99, the $7. So that's a way to use limits. So was it worth the extra $5 for you to have that happen, have those 2 shares sell and save 1? What you said is if it reaches a certain price, I want to save half and get rid of half, but you had 3 shares, so you got rid of 2 out of 3, right? It's paid off for you. You're in second place. Jacob's not here, we've talked about his too. So meanwhile, I wanted to relate this back to taxable income because when you look at the taxes, whoops, right there, he sold that this year. So now when he goes to do his taxes in February, March, or April of next year, he'll have this like W-2 type form from the brokerage if this were real, and it would show all the money he made as a gain from selling it for a higher price than what he bought it for. And then it's all about how long do you hold that gain. Now you see line 13? That's where your gains are reported. You have to do a form, Schedule D, where you list every investment you went ahead and sold for the year. If he would have held on to that for next year, the year after, no taxes are paid on that because the price is going up until he sells it. But if you hold it for 10 years, you may have $10,000 in gains because you held it for so long. You're paying all the tax on that the year you sold it, as if it's all came at one time. So that's kind of the risk in holding it too long sometimes. But if it's in a retirement plan, it's a different story. So he would have to report that on line 13. Now, the reason you have to fill out Schedule D, the main question that will be asked there is, how long did you own it? What was the date you purchased? And that'll all be on the form you get, just like a W-2 from your job. It will show you the date you purchased and the date you sold it. It will show you how much you spent on buying it, how much you got from selling it, as far as your initial investment, and it will show you the difference, and that's the part you got to pay taxes on. We're right here on capital gains tax rates. It's all based on how long you own it. Now, I mentioned this last week, and I said, what is the time frame that determines long-term versus short-term capital gains tax?
1 year.
1 year. It's all about 1 year. And if you're trying to make a decision what to sell, and you got it down to two, and one you've had for less than a year and one you've had more than a year, you always want to, if you have to sell one, you always want to pick the one you had for longer than a year. And here's why. Look at, is this it? Is this it? Is this it? Right here. Let's say this person, if they made $1 more, remember when we were doing the taxes, 10%, 15%, 25%. If they made $1 more, so really their taxable income is $39,002, what rate would that next dollar be taxed at? They were already at $39,001 and we calculated the tax, but we missed out. We didn't realize they made $1 more, so we got to add it on. What would be the rate on that next dollar that we have to add to this? What, would it be 10%, 15%, or 25%? 25. Because they're already over the $9,275 at the 10%. They're already over the $37,650 to qualify for the 15%. So every dollar they're making after this is going to be at 25 till they reach that ceiling, and then they're at the next tax rate. The question you just answered is, what is the tax rate on the next dollar earned is called marginal tax rate, which is the fourth item down. Marginal means, what's the rate going to be on the next dollar earned? Let's pretend this person's in the 25% marginal tax rate. So from their job, their taxable income after deductions was $39,001, but now they made money from some investments. They made $100 from their investments, and they're in the 25% tax bracket. If they held onto that investment over a year or longer, matter of fact, doesn't matter, I won't trick you, it'll be either longer or shorter, they don't have to pay 25% of the money they made on the investment. They only have to pay 15%. Because they held it for over a year, they get a discount on the money they made from that investment because they held it longer a year. They only have to pay 15%. If they're in the 28% marginal tax bracket, the next dollar earned, they only have to pay 15% if they held that investment longer than a year. If they're in the 33% tax bracket and they held that investment longer than a year, they only have to pay 15%. 35%, and if you're in the 39.6% tax bracket, your marginal tax rate, the next dollar earned, which you've made a ton of money, you get to pay only 20% on the money you made from an investment you held longer than a year. What if you're in the 10%? You didn't make much money, but you made $200 from an investment, but your taxable income is only $8,000. What would be your tax rate on the money you made from that investment because you held it for longer than a year? Everybody see it? 0. If you've only made $8,000, your taxable income is $8,000, you're in the 10% tax bracket because you're right there if you're single, finally single. And so the money made on that investment that you held over a year, you don't pay any taxes on it at all. It's tax-free. So you'll see some people put some investments in their children's name or young adults who aren't working yet, maybe they're in college or something, because they want to avoid even the 15% tax by, hey, I'm going to cash this investment in, it's in my son's name, we'll be on their taxes. What's the tax rate on that investment? 0. And legally you can do it that way, but the chance is you have a poor relationship with that son or daughter, they can go and take that investment and cash it in anytime they want. It's in their name. But it's legal. That's the risk you take. So anyway, I just wanted you to see how important it is to at least know how long you owned an investment if you're thinking about cashing it in because of this tax decision. That's a big difference. 25 and 15, that's 10% more in your pocket that you don't have to give to the government by just hanging on to it a little longer if you're getting close to a year. Or cashing in a different investment that you've had longer than a year instead of this one that you've had less than a year. All right, so back to this tax form. The first section that we covered is the income section. And we talked about the most common ones you're going to face: wages, taxable interest, dividends, and capital gains from investments. And then you might own a rental property. There it is, line 17. There would be your income or loss from owning a rental property. I have a couple myself. Unemployment. If you've ever received unemployment before, they always ask you, do you want to have taxes withheld out of it? Whether you say yes or no, most people say, no, I don't want taxes withheld. They got to report it on line 19 and pay taxes when they do their taxes. Unemployment is taxable income. The next section is called adjustments. Things like, I'm going to take an IRA deduction, or I'm doing a health savings account because my employer doesn't offer a health savings account, or I'm trying to think, tuition. Or you get a form from the college, 8917 says form or some kind of thing you get, almost looks like a W-2 a little bit. Has anybody ever gotten that in the mail? And it shows the portion of tuition and fees you had to pay out of your pocket that was not covered in grants, that maybe you had to use a loan for. You get to subtract it from your income right there on line 34. You do a loan form. It's tax deductible, the money you spent on education, not covered by grants. You have to use a loan or whatever else. These are your adjustments, and then here's your income minus all your adjustments. This number right here is called adjusted gross income. It's an important number. You'll see it referred to as AGI a lot. What's your AGI? And it's that number at the bottom of the first page, and then you transfer that exact same number to the top of the second page. Top of the back is also your AGI, adjusted gross income. One important way you use that number is when you go to do the state of Michigan taxes, the first line item it asks you is, what was your adjusted gross income from your federal return? That's the number you're transferring to do your state taxes on. It's that number. Now on the back, after you transferred your adjusted gross income, you start doing these other things called itemized or standard deductions. You look at this column on the far left, go to single filing or ordinary filing separately. Look at the amount there. It says $6,300. Is that correct? I can't see it. I'm too close. $6,300 is a standard deduction. And most people will just say, okay, standard deduction, $6,300. Once you own a house, you're going to be using itemized deduction because the money you're paying in interest on the mortgage you took out to buy your house, as well as your property taxes, are all part of itemized deductions, and they'll add up to more than $6,300. So you'll end up doing itemized instead of a standard to get that larger deduction. Because that amount gets subtracted from your adjusted gross income, meaning you don't have to pay taxes on this $6,300 or however much it adds up to. And then there's your exemptions. However many people you listed that you are responsible for on the front, yourself. Times, what's the number there? Times, exemptions are times. Anybody see it? $4,050. So 1 times 4,050, you subtract the 4,050, and now you're on line 43, taxable income. That's where the tax is calculated. That's line 43. After all those adjustments, after your itemized or standard deduction, after your exemptions get subtracted, all of that, then you're where you're at the number you have to pay taxes on. And that's what your taxes are based on, is that number on line 43. And that's the number being given to you on those study problems. The taxable income is, we're already past everything, and we're on line 43, and you're calculating the tax. And you'll have that on your quiz. I'll edit that out. That's the benefit showing up to you. Okay? All right. Types of taxes, taxable income, tax calculation. I'm going to slide 10 just to see what this says about marginal tax rate. There it is right there. It's the whatever rate the next dollar earned is whatever rate bracket the taxable income falls in at the end. That's called your marginal tax rate. Okay, we're going to slide 13 for those who have the PowerPoint. Tax credit versus tax deduction. $100. The big difference is, if there's a tax deduction of 100, you get to subtract 100, and this taxable income will be 100 less. So that's 100 less dollars for you to have to pay taxes on. Let me say that again. The tax deduction gets subtracted from the income, which brings the taxable income, line 43, down, which means that's 100 less dollars, or whatever the amount is, less that you don't have to pay taxes on. That's a tax deduction. A tax credit is after taxable income, after tax is calculated. And it gets subtracted not from your income, but from your taxes. And so a tax credit lowers your taxes dollar for dollar. So if you're in the 25% tax bracket marginal rate, and you subtract $100 from this taxable income, you're going to save 25% in taxes. So $25 out of the 100 is no longer owed on that $100. But if it's a tax credit, here's our taxes, $5,521. We get to subtract the full 100. We're not just bringing our taxes down $25, we're bringing the taxes down a full $100. That's the difference. And so I want to make sure you realize what a tax credit is. Right here. Line 43 is our taxable income. Line 44 is the taxes we just calculated using those charts, or we looked on the table, took the easy way. And then below there are tax credits. Foreign tax credit, credit for child and dependent care expenses. If anybody has children, they're taken to a daycare, there's a tax credit. You get to subtract from your taxes, not from your income. It's a big deal. Education credits, that's a whole other story. Retirement savings contribution credit, child tax credit, another story. Here's one a lot of people don't realize. Residential energy credit. In the middle of winter, someone's furnace goes out, they're calling all the places they can find to come and give them prices for a new furnace if that's what has to be done. They're going, oh. The person who's saying, here's the furnace we can install, or here's the furnace we can install, and they're looking and they're going, oh, I gotta go with the lesser expensive one. Not taking into consideration the possibility that the more expensive one might qualify for a residential energy credit. And so if you know about this credit, you can say, oh, hey, wow, this one is $3,500, this one's $4,500, but I get $1,000 back if I go with this high efficiency one in a tax credit. If you know that, then you realize the better decision is the nicer high efficiency one, because it's the same price after you get this tax credit than the lesser expensive one, and it lowers your utility bills from the moment you install it, because it's a high efficiency, and that's why you're getting that credit for going the extra effort to get the higher efficiency, more expensive one to save energy costs. The government says, we're so happy you're saving energy costs, we're going to reimburse you some of the cost of that more expensive furnace. And it's called the residential energy credit. There's water heater. It applies to higher end, higher efficiency type things that you would put in your house. And a lot of people say, oh, I don't want to spend the extra money, and they don't realize they would get it back if they go ahead and spend it. So knowing about these can help you make better decisions when the emergency comes and you're in a hurry to get a furnace or a water heater or whatever goes out, because there's these benefits. So there's the credits right there, other credits, whatever those are. Most common are the child care credit, the residential energy credit are the most common ones used, but those are worth a lot. $100 in a tax deduction, you only are saving $25 in taxes if you're in the 25% tax bracket. $100 tax credit, you're saving $100 in taxes, dollar for dollar. That's how valuable a credit is. So that's the difference. And I believe that is everything on our list. Is that right? We have any questions? Oh, wait, I forgot to show you this. Does this look familiar? Anybody ever seen a W-2? This is just a generic W-2. You're doing your taxes, even if you're using like TurboTax, it'll say, fill in the number from box 1 from your W-2, right? You put in the number from box 1. And then it'll say, a lot of people use box 2, is that federal tax return? Put in the number from box 2 from your W-2. You put that number in. I want you to be prepared where box 3 and box, I can't see it, 5, will be different from box 1. Get used to that, because when you're out there working for a big corporation, you're going to be asked to get into the retirement program. And they're probably going to offer some matching, so you're going to say, yes, I got to get that matching. So some of your income is going to go into a retirement program, a 401k or whatever it's labeled. And what will happen is box 1 is the money you made that you have to pay taxes on. And every time money goes into your retirement, it gets subtracted out of box 1. Because you don't have to pay taxes on the money you make that you say, yes, go ahead and put it in my retirement. While it's in your retirement, it's never been taxed because it won't be in box 1 anymore. But after you retire and you take money out of it, then you're paying taxes on that money later in life. But you don't have to while it's happening. So box 3 and box 5 still show your full income, even the money you had put in retirement, but the part that went into retirement, since you don't have to pay taxes on it now, box 1 will be a smaller number. That will be a more common W-2 you'll see in your future. Has anybody ever seen that yet? Does anybody have a retirement program where they work? Nobody? You do? Have you seen where the box 1's different? Yeah. And you still got to pay Social Security on the money going into the retirement and Medicare tax, but you don't have to pay taxes on it until later in life. So I wanted to get used to that, and W-2, and then what was the other thing? Table we did, capital gains we did. That's it? Study problems? You got a quiz? Where's the sign-in sheet? Anybody have it? Is there anybody that has not signed in? Everybody signed in? All right, I'll see you at the quiz on Wednesday. Usual procedure. Open book, open note, so on and so on.